our PatternFly demo. We host this demo at the end of every sprint, so you can see what we've gotten done most recently. And I post this recording on the YouTube channel in case you want to share it out to anyone who might be interested. And we highly encourage folks to come from outside of our team to see what we've been up to this sprint. So to kick us off, Christy is going to cover a couple of updates we made on our core repo, HTML, CSS. So I'll pass it off to you, Christy.
Sure. So the first thing that I worked on this last sprint is the data toolbar attribute value filters. And so there's 3 variations here, but there's actually 6 examples. And the reason for this is that we're splitting up our desktop examples from our mobile examples. And this is just to do with the data toolbar component, some changes that were made, because basically it's not going to respond like any other component in PatternFly. The elements are being actually moved in the DOM. And so React is going to be handling that. So if you come to see these examples in the core repo, just understand that they're split up between desktop and mobile. And so the first one is an attribute value search filter. So you have the select here, and then so this attribute is attached with all of these values that you can search for in this input group. And then you can see here the mobile version where this kind of like select attached with the input group moves into this expandable content section here, and you can toggle that using this toggle button. And then the next is this select with another select. So again, these are related by attribute value pairs. And this is how it looks when it's expanded. So you'll see it's in this expandable content container. And then when one of these selects are expanded, it'll expand outside of its container here. And then the third one is an attribute value filter using a checkbox select. So you have this attribute with all of these values that you can check on and off. And the badge also denotes how many are checked. And then you see the chip groups here. And then the mobile version is shown here. So all of these selects and the chip, this whole chip group fits under here. And you can clear all filters there. So that's it for those demos. Then the other thing in core was just a quick fix of for this icon here that sits inside of the options menu dropdown. Now in React, you can actually use this with an SVG, not just an icon, and it won't break. So that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Christy.
So I didn't quite get it. How does it change between the desktop and the mobile one? Or is that something I need to decide beforehand, or what's the logic there?
Oh, here, I can show again. Yeah, so I think it's probably best to look at the React implementation for here of how it's actually moving. But React handles it though, because React will kind of move these elements in the DOM to underneath in this container, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And then we have like the overflow menu component here, and that reduces to this kebab icon.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Great, thank you. And Michael Coker.
Good morning. Okay. Up first is an addition that we made to the form control component. We now have variations that you can use with the text area that apply the resize property. And what that does is it limits the resize functionality of the element to either the vertical or the horizontal axis. So this, by default, our text areas can be resized in any direction. The value for that is resize both. Here we apply resize vertical, which doesn't allow you to modify the width of the text area. And then here's resize horizontal, which is the opposite. And so you can't modify the height, but you can modify the width. After that, this is just an example for reference if someone wanted to use it. In the select component, we added an example called panel. It mimics an example that we have for the drop-down component called panel. that shows how you can use something other than a UL or a standard list in the select menu, and you can place your own types of items inside of it. And so this is the standard select toggle with just a div that gives you the class names and the attributes that you want to apply to that element, but it's empty, and then you can place anything inside of that you wanted to. Up next was the navigation component. We have a variation of our navigation. We have multiple variations for different types that you would want to use. And one of them was called simple and simple navigation. We had examples of the simple navigation as the top level navigation. And also there was an example of our grouped navigation that used simple navigation. And simple navigation is this nav that you see inside of expanded navigation submenus. That navigation shouldn't be used as a top level navigation. And so we simply did some cleanup and removed the examples of simple nav where it was top level navigation. And you can only now find it inside of the expanded navigation examples. Up next was with our accordion. We now allow you to nest the accordion inside of another element and remove this box shadow that applies to the accordion. So you can place it inside of a card or something that already has its own box shadow, or something that you want to align with no shadow barrier between an element to the top, left, right, or bottom of it. And so you can just apply variation to the accordion to remove the box shadow. There was also a small bug that was fixed, if anyone had noticed. The blue border on the left of the expanded item in the accordion was causing the text inside of the content to shift over the width of the blue border. And so it was, I think, about a 3 pixel value there. So this text would have been moved over 3 pixels, and so that's been fixed. Let's see. Up next is if you're opting in to the new Red Hat font within PatternFly, we now have a monospace font stack that's dedicated to that font family. It's not the same face. It's called Liberation Mono, and we offer an entire stack with fallbacks for that. But it pairs well with the Red Hat font, and so now if you use the monospace font and you've opted into the Red Hat font, instead of getting the default Overpass Mono, which you would have gotten previously to match the old Overpass font that we were using, you'll now get this Liberation Mono stack. And up last, this is thanks to Jeff Phillips for the contribution. He added this success variation of our form control component. So you can basically see it here. It's it has a green border and a green check mark indicating that there was a success. You can apply this to the text inputs, the select element, or the text area. And then to complement that, he also added support for success helper text in our form in the form component. So previously we just had this error helper text. Now you have success helper text as well that you can associate with a form control element that is in this success state. And that's it.
Great.
So, cool
Thank
question
you,
for the first one. Sorry, I'm full of questions today. Just wanted to verify. So the regular input, that's not resizable by default on all inputs now, right? But that's like a property that you add to it if you want it resized.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool.
The regular input element you can't resize by default.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I got a bit bored there, so that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And Matt Knowlton?
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So pretty quick update this week, and it's just the closable chip group, which is adding a button to a toolbar styled chip group, and then adding the accessibility notes for that. So pretty simple, and that's it. Questions?
Okay, thanks, Matt. Must have been super clear. I think you covered it.
Must have been, yeah.
Um, all right. And then on the React side, head over to React, we have Christy.
Yep, so we added the divider component to React, and this is an experimental component, and you can see these variations here. They just vary in terms of the actual markup, that HTML markup that the divider is. So it's either an HR, which is default, you can use it as a list item, and you can use it as a div. And so this is experimental, but when it moves out of experimental, it'll replace things like, so like in the application launcher, we have sections and we use our own like separator element here. So the divider will replace a separator here. So like in the app launcher or in, you drop down the groups. Yeah, something like this. And that's all.
Great, thank you. Katie?
All right, good morning, everyone. Let me just share my screen. There we go. So today I've got two different table demos to show off. They're kind of just giving us examples of how you might interact with our table component and some of our other components. So first up, we've got our bulk select table demo, which previously the table had like a header icon where it's just like a simple checkbox. You could do all or nothing, and there's really just no other way to customize it. So what we've done in this demo is actually kind of separate that out. So this is a separate component, like a select. Maybe you could put that up in your toolbar. So it actually lets you control and tracks how many different selections you have. And if you expand it, shows you can select very specific increments. So you can select just the current page, move to like your next couple pages, say, okay, I want these ones selected too. And you can unselect them and it'll still track all of these references. If you go back to the first page, everything's still selected. It also lets you select everything, and you see the checkbox changes from the null check to a check and back and forth. And it lets you select nothing again. So just a different way of tracking that's a bit more expansive than that one single on-off toggle all checkbox that the table had. And a good example for building out a toolbar with table. All right, our second table demo, similar thing. It's a kind of a toolbar component that you might use it with table is for filtering. So this is two different drop downs, one that controls which filter you're going to filter by, and the second, which is actually the filter. So you can see filter by running, and it'll add the chip group and pop-ups for updates. 1 second. All right, so you see that it's filtered by all of the statuses with running, and this clear all filters button shows up just in case you want to clear everything. So if you have multiple things selected, it'll clear everything versus just saying, okay, I don't want running anymore, just stopped. You can filter by name as well, which is servers. So if I want to say just node 6, and then location, which is in Raleigh, but if you say, well, let's try Westford, there's an empty state that gets shown as well, just saying that you have no results. And to clear some of your filters, which you can clear all of them down here as well, or you can just unclick Westford and it comes back. Now, something to notice about this filterable table demo specifically is that it uses the data toolbar, which is still an experimental component. So this demo, as well as the toolbar, may be subject to change and changes in the component. And because it's data toolbar, it has a responsive view. So when you collapse it down a bit, it tells you your filters that have been applied and lets you have a pop-up menu, and it shows you your filters. There's a little bit of a visual bug here, which is why I'm saying disclaimer for the experimental, just about these chip groups and locations. So keep an eye out for changes for that, but otherwise it's a really good example to get started on building out a toolbar with table.
Thanks, Katie. Well, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of kudos in the chat. I think a lot of folks are excited to see this up and going. It looks great. I know a lot of hard work went in. And Jesse.
Yeah, that was really cool. Thanks, Katie. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I just have a really quick update for you guys. Basically, we noticed in a lot of our files we were using an old way of saying this dot set state, which is kind of an unreliable way to update your component's next state. So we wanted to make sure we went back through and updated state based on previous state. And the reason why you want to do this is that this dot props and this dot state can be updated asynchronously. So you shouldn't rely on their values to calculate the next state. And by fixing this, we basically help prevent future lifecycle bugs and help our code stability. So I just wanted to update you guys that we're improving our code stability too. That's kind of all I really wanted to say.
Great, thanks, Jesse. And then we'll continue to our website. Definitely want to leave time to answer questions at the end. We'll definitely have that time, so we'll get to those, I promise. And Matt Karan is going to cover an update to the bulk selection design guidelines on the website.
Okay, I'll share my screen out. So we added 2 new design guidelines in this sprint. The first one is bulk selection. So bulk selection, this is design documentation that is intended to go with the demo that Katie just showed for bulk selection. So we talk about the location of the bulk selector in the toolbar, and a little bit about uses of the intermediate selection state, and some general usage. So this is most meant to guide designers in using the bulk selector, the behaviors associated with it. And I also did note here that so we still do support this integrated bulk selection checkbox in the table. There's a prop that can be set to turn that off and on. So the change that was made was that we can now disable that and hand over control of the bulk selection to the toolbar. So in most cases where you're using a toolbar with a table or a list, you'll want to use the bulk selector in the toolbar because it just gives you more control, more flexibility, better feedback. But there still may be some cases where you just want to put a simple table in a page and continue to use that integrated selection checkbox. So that's bulk selection. The link is in the agenda if anybody wants to read the details. Any questions? Okay, if not, I will hand it off to Gina to talk about pagination.
Thanks, Matt. Let me share my screen. So I recently worked on pagination guidelines that differentiate full pagination from compact pagination. And now we give some more guidelines of when we recommend you use each type, and then how also they scale down on mobile. Yeah, that's really all. And then we link the demos and components at the bottom. That's all I got.
Great, thank you, Gina. That's the end of our agenda today. Do you have any questions for our group? We have time to get into those. So if you have any, feel free to raise them. All right, thank you so much everyone for attending. If you do have questions that come up or you want to start a discussion, go ahead and access the forum link from our agenda, or you can find us on Slack always. We're happy to answer those. And we'll talk with you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.